Hi everyone, Darren Cornell here. How are you all doing? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to my studio. Give me 1 second. Right, getting my final sip of coffee out of the way before we do this. And yes, that was a Groot mug to go with my Groot fridge magnet that's stuck onto my light and my Groot figure that's in my other room. Groot everywhere. Hi, welcome back. Welcome to the start of a brand new tutorial series. This is exciting, we are for the first time doing a painting series from start to finish using only Vallejo paints, nothing else. We are not using these old MP paints that I've used for the last 12 years. I've spent 12 years honing my craft, learning these, and now I'm throwing them away and changing to these because lots of you people use these paints, and it makes sense to use paints that you can buy easily for those of you who are learning to paint, you know, with me. So we are stopping these. I've still got them. I might still use them here and there if I know I need a particular colour and one of these works, and that's fine, but not here, not now. Today we are doing a series just with these, and ultimately in the future that's all we will be using. I think what will probably happen is on camera, these are the ones that we'll use. If I'm doing something off camera and I know I've got a colour that works, I'll use that up until they've all been thrown away. But for now, new things. What we are painting, Kylo Ren. I figured if we're going to start and use brand new paints and do a new tutorial series with lots of experimentation and me trying to figure things out, we might as well do an interesting head, and Adam Driver has an interesting head. Let me just take my hoodie off. I'm boiling here. I think I've got the heating up too high. Anyway, so we are doing a series from start to finish using these new paints. Now, I know I will get the end result that I need. I know at the end of all of this, it will look exactly like Kylo Ren. I know that I will get the same satisfaction of having done a job well done, because I've always managed to get good results no matter what paint or what brushes I use. The process will be slightly different because with these paints I know what I'm doing. I know how these work. I know how much thinner to add. I know which ones can be used slightly in a slightly transparent way as washes. I know which ones cover quite flat. I know which ones need a bit more thinner. I know how these work. I haven't got a clue with these ones. I've done some testing and they are all over the place. Sometimes they're too thick, sometimes they're too thin. Sometimes it looks like I've got a particular colour and then I paint it on and it dries and it's completely different. This is going to be a learning process for me. And like I said, I know I'll get the result, but how to get there for me is going to be a bit of a journey like this along the way, trying to figure it out. But we'll get there. Now I've got a bunch of colours. You know what? Let me bring in the overhead camera just for 1 second to show you what I'm talking about. I don't know if I've got this in the right place or not because I haven't used this yet. Let me change to the overhead with me in the corner. Here's me in the corner. Okay, so there's... Try and stop it wobbling. So these are the paints that I've got here. I've painted the paint from inside the bottle onto the top of each lid so I can see quickly which colour it is that I'm grabbing, because I don't yet know the names or the code numbers. So if I try and remember that, I won't get anywhere. And also the colours look very different through this plastic because it's not like these. They're in glass bottles, so they're proper see-through and you can see the colour. With these it's a milky white plastic and they don't look exactly the same. So I've painted these colours on top just so I can see exactly what they are, and over time, and it won't just happen in this one series, but over time, over the next 3 or 4 commissions maybe, I will get used to which ones work, which ones I go to at a certain time, which ones work better than others, and I will probably narrow it down, and some of them will get put to one side and not maybe used as much. Some of them I will focus on, because when I was using these ones, I would paint most of my commissions, most of everything, with about 12 colours. Now these Vallejo paints, you can buy about 300 different shades of these. I don't want 300 shades, I just want to have a few colours that I know I can do everything with, and also that I can teach others how to do the same thing. Now some people might find it easier to go, I need this very specific shade of brown to do this thing, and then I've got 5 different shades of brown for all the other things. And that's fine. I would rather have a couple of good colours and go, I will use those, but if I add a bit of red, I can get that. If I add a bit of blue, I can get that, because that's how I've always done it with these. But like I said, this isn't going to be straightforward for me, because I don't know these paints at all, and I don't know these colours. I've bought ones that I think roughly match. I know already some of them don't, so we will, through the process of doing this, see how it goes on and we'll see if we get there. Now this video, this series I should say, of videos is going up, unusually this time, is going up on both my Patreon and YouTube. Normally my full painting tutorial series, where it goes from start to finish and every brushstroke, they are on my Patreon. YouTube get the shorter edited 10-minute videos that show everything I do, but without being 16 hours long. But in this case I figured, because this is the first time I'm doing this, maybe it'll be interesting to let everybody watch how I mess up. That'll be quite funny. And perhaps a bit educational, because I know some people on YouTube have been waiting for me to do this. And even if at the end of it I don't come out with a simple, here's how I do this method, and I don't think I will, not on this one series, people on YouTube will have an idea of how I do it and how they can do it. And maybe that will be enough for them to go off and do their own thing using these paints. Maybe some of them will come over to Patreon, where they can watch me do this for every commission and watch me as I get better with these paints. Because I think it'll take me 3, 4 or 5 commissions, proper full start to finish series, until I'm fluent with these paints. And that will be a thing where I get better over time. And as I said, the end result will always be the same, but how I get there is going to be a thing where it's going to take practice. But for this one, everyone can watch me mess up. Now, I will put it up on Patreon first. For my patrons who are watching this now, you guys will get this straight away as I do it. For people on YouTube, you will get to see it 3 or 4 weeks later. I'm not sure yet. There's been a lot going on. I've been focusing on the paints. I don't know the time frame yet. It's probably going to be a few weeks later, and I'll put it up on YouTube for everyone to see. And then after that, back to the normal, edited and full on the 2 separate platforms. But for now, this is what we're doing. So let's get started. And I'm actually quite nervous. I don't know why I'm nervous. I've been painting things for 12 years, but because it's a different paint and because I don't really know what I'm doing or if the colours will work, I'm sort of a little bit terrified. Okay, I was just taking the lids off my thinners, which I've got over here to one side a little bit, with my water, and I will bring, where are we? No, I'll have another coffee first, because I've just done a lot of talking. Actually no, I'm going to put that over there where I can get to it easier. Right, let's bring this camera in and make sure we've got this in the right place. So while I'm sitting here under this light, now that I've brought this light in, if I can change, if So I don't normally do this, but I want to try something new. If I can change to, let's see, a darker camera here, because I've got this bright light in front of me, it should make it look a little bit better when I've got me in the corner, because I'm not going to be so bleached out. Normally when I swing in this light above me, whoops, sorry, when I swing in this light above me, I end up being very bright here. So by darkening that camera, that should help. As long as I remember, when I swing that camera out and the light out of the way, to brighten this one again. I've got to remember that. So remind me, please, because I will forget, because, well, you know me, I forget things. Okay, so let's get this in the right place. If I put that about there, if I just turn that a little bit that way, I think when I'm painting, that's probably quite good because you'll be able to see quite a lot there. But just for now, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. No, that's the wrong camera. I zoomed the wrong camera out. Okay. Overhead camera, please, and zoom out a bit. There we go. So, we have the palette, messy palette. We have all of these paints. I will give you a link underneath this video where you can go and see the paints that I use, rather than me reading them all out on video, because that would take forever. And also because I don't really know yet if all of these colours are going to get used. I've got quite a few different flesh colours and quite a few other different flesh colours. I've separated them into ones that I think I will use and ones that I'm not sure if I will use. And then some of the middle ones I think will be regular colours. So it's a rough separation. I've got some brushes here. These are some of the brushes that I was using in my last videos. Piece of kitchen roll. I had this here just because I was looking at the colour before and comparing it to some of these ones, because that is a colour that I think is a decent match for the base colour of what I normally use, the tanned flesh that I put underneath everything, but it's not perfect. Having done a little bit of that, I can see it perhaps could be a little bit more yellow, perhaps could be a little bit more red. So maybe instead of just using this as a base colour, until I buy a different colour, I will put in a drop of yellow and red, and we will see. So I'm going to get this out of the way for now. Let's bring in Kylo. Now I need to get myself in a position where I can... Ow! I just need the filing cabinet that's under my desk. Ow, that hurts. I normally sit with sort of one leg on either side, but to do this I want to be in the right place for the camera and without getting paint on my elbows. Okay, so that's going to be there. Where's the focus? So the focus is about there, I think. La, 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 la. Okay, so if I'm doing that, that should be fine. If I tilt that a little bit down and then try and zoom that back in a bit, so that should be okay there. So it's quite flat because the light is coming in straight overhead, so there's not many shadows until I tilt it like that. We'll see how it works. If I need to at some point rebuild the rig that I've got this camera hanging from, then I will do that at some point. Maybe it needs to be more sturdy and for the camera to come further away from the light. That would probably help, but for now this usually works for any previous ones, and I can change the focus if I need to show you guys something up close. Okay, let's get on with it. So I'm going to start off with some of this beige red. Where's the focus again? I've got to remember where the focus is. Okay, so I'm looking at that text. Beige red, beige red, beige red. Focus about there. And a bit out of focus down here. So I'm going to use this as the base. Let me put a bunch of drops down on here. Now this is, I'm just putting that down there for now. I'm looking at that and the lid, and I think it needs to be a little bit more yellow. Now, working off the top of my head here, I've got one here called Sunny Skin Tone, which is quite yellow, quite orange, but I'm going to add 1 drop of that. Let's try 1 drop for now. And I'm going to take, I've got 2 types of red, flat red and vermilion. I'm going to take the vermilion. I'm going to give it a bit of a shake. I've given them all quite a shake beforehand, but I just want to make sure. I'm going to try and do a small drop of this. It's not going to work, is it? I know, I'll just touch it to it. There you go. A little bit of red. Now I've got a feeling this red is going to overpower everything. And if it does, then I'll have to add more of the flesh colours. I'm just going to drop in a bit of thinner, but also a bit of water, because I've learnt that just using the thinner or the flow enhancer by itself makes things quite sticky. So, where are we? So that's what we've got there. That actually doesn't look too bad. Now I don't know what that'll be like when it's dried, but I think that looks, it's actually really difficult to show this with the light overhead, isn't it? There you go. You got it for a little bit there when it was moving. So that gives you an idea of what it looks like there. Okay, that might not be too bad. And this is just a first layer, so this is going to be a very quick paint it on, and then we're going to have to come back because I will need to do a bunch of coats to this anyway. But let's get started. Now up in the edges, it doesn't matter. Let me check that we are in the right place. So I put my elbow on that side of the, okay, that should be okay. It doesn't matter if it goes up against the hair or goes over eyeballs or anything at this stage, because as long as I'm careful around the eyeballs and don't put too much paint on, it'll be fine because they'll get painted over. In terms of up against the hairlines, that doesn't matter because this is quite thin paint and it's going to be repainted anyway. There's going to be several layers of this, and there's going to be, the hair is going to be painted anyway, so any slight messy bits will get neatened up, and that's fine. Oops. Okay, I've got to try and, where do I lean? So if I lean, wow, I just knocked the desk and everything started wobbling. Now for some of the smaller bits, some of the neater edges or smaller corners, I could have done with a smaller brush, but I'll do that on future layers, future coats. For now, this will just work as a way of getting the colour on to start with. And like I said, this is going to take 2 or 3 layers to get the flat colour that I need. Well, that's a good start. And looking at that so far, just as a very first thing, I think that is not too bad. I think if I get a few layers of that on, so it'll be a little bit thicker, the colour, a little bit deeper, and you won't see the grey through it in the same way you can now. That looks like a good approximation of the colour that I used to use. And I'm glad I was filming that, so in the future I can remember exactly what I did. I know what it was. It was some of that and some of that. But what I might do, if that turns out to be spot on, rather than spend ages buying multiple bottles of hundreds of flesh tones from Vallejo until I find one that works, I might just mix some of that in a separate bottle, get one of these that's empty, and mix some of that with the right amount of beige red and sunny skin tone and vermilion, and make a base layer, a base paint that I use to put the base colours on, and then use all of these to do the detailed separate work. That's quite good, that. Okay, let me put that down for 1 second. And even though, because normally when I'm working I would go straight on to something else, or go away and make a sandwich or something and then come back and paint another layer, because we're on a video and I don't want to stop it. I don't want this to be a one where I have to film 4 hours of things and edit them all and spend a lot of time doing that, because I want to just be able to record these things and put them straight on. What I'm going to do, it's a slightly different way than I normally do it, but it still works. I'm going to paint the first layer of the hair in the same way that I normally would, but I'm just doing it before I've done all of the skin layers. Normally I would do the multiple layers of the base skin, let that dry, then go on. No, actually, I'm lying. I would do the base skin, let that dry, do the dry brushing of the lighter highlight colour of the skin, do all of that stuff. At some point then the base layers of the hair would go on, and then we'd start neatening things up and adding details and various shades and shadows and highlights and colours and everything. What I'll do for now, just to get the early layers on, and all of this can be neatened up in exactly the same way, I'm going to do a layer of very dark brown on his hair, but it's in the same way as I've done with the skin, where it's quite thin and will need more layers. I'm using a colour here called black brown, German C. Is that German camo? I'm not sure what that stands for. I've never looked that up. It looked like a good colour, so I ordered it. 822 is the code if you use these paints. So I'm just going to put this down and let's get a couple of blobs of that down. Where did that go? I might buy myself a stand to put these. Normally with the other paints I would have them just at the top of my paint thing here, but if I start using these and know what I'm doing eventually, it might be a good idea to just have a little stand at the end. You know, like I've got this brush stand here, which previously I used to have at the end of my paint board, this board that I can slide around, which is essentially a big chopping board from IKEA. And I use this because I can have all of my paints and my brushes and all of my bits and pieces on here, and when I'm done with painting and I need to do something else, if I need to reply to some client emails, I can slide this board out of the way and I have empty desk space instead of moving all things individually, and that's great. And I used to have those brushes at the end but what used to happen, and this might creak because I know it squeaks sometimes, if I move this into shot, my microphone, which is on an arm, in fact if you can look in the bottom corner you can see it better there, that microphone, I have that in front of me and the brushes would be behind the microphone and I wouldn't be able to get to them. So for now those brushes are living off to one side, and that's why I'm keeping a few on my desk, the ones that I've been using a bit more, and then I will just reach over there. I mean, I'm touching them now, they're just literally to one side. But it might be good if I can have these just a little bit further back, or in a stand or something, even keeping them in shot maybe, but a little bit neater. So you know, they don't get mixed up. Right, what was I doing? Oh, thinner. So we've just put some of that black brown down there. I'm just trying to get some thinner. I don't even think I'm putting my brush in it. There you go. And a bit of water, and I suspect I've done too much and this is going to be way too thin. Oh, it might be alright actually. Okay, so sorry, just realised you couldn't see that. That's just black brown there. I just put some drops of the black brown down and put a little bit of flow enhancer on it and a little bit of water. So it's thinned down, but it's not just using the flow enhancer, which is quite soapy, bizarrely. It smells like the liquid you used to use as a kid when you were blowing bubbles. It smells like that. And I spilt some on my desk in one of my tutorial videos. People from my Patreon will remember this. And I knocked a whole bottle over on my desk. Oh, my chair just went down. Fix yourself, chair. I think I need a new chair. I spilled a whole bottle all over my desk, and it smelled like it was. The smell really gave me flashbacks to being a kid, because it had that smell of being a child and blowing bubbles, and I was I was astounded. I was really surprised by it, and I had noticed in the past, but I thought it was me being stupid, that sometimes using that stuff would cause bubbles to form on the paint. And I thought that's me doing it wrong, or it's something to do with the brush that I'm using or something. And then one of my patrons suggested that maybe the reason why occasionally in the past some of the heads I was painting would end up being quite sticky to the touch, and I always thought it was a fault with the resin, and they suggested that it's quite possibly because I'm using more flow enhancer to thin things down than water. And I thought, oh, that might make sense if that's quite a soapy liquid. So I've started using it to create the paint-like feel that I like when it's thinned down, and to stop the paint separating in the water. But I also use water, so I'm not just using flow enhancer. So I'm thinning down the flow enhancer, which I'm then using to thin down the paint, if that makes sense. So I'm just using, let me put that there so you can see. Just using the black brown that I've thinned down, and you can see it's thinned down because when it dries you can still see through to the grey primer on the head. The head, by the way, which was just a plain white resin head, I took into the back garden and I sprayed it with grey all-purpose primer. Now this was stuff that you can buy in any hardware store. It could be stuff that is used for car painting, it could be stuff that's used for you get stuff that's general all-purpose primer for anything essentially, and that's just what I get. I've used a couple of different brands, Valspar, I've used Rust-Oleum, I think, I can't remember the other one that I've used. Plasticoat is the other one that I've used, and I'm not sure if some of those are owned by the same company, I don't know. But I just go into the shop, into the hardware store. Here in the UK it's B&Q. If you're in a different country it would be something else. And I just go to the spray can section and pick up whichever all-purpose primer they have, and that's what I use. So that was sprayed with grey primer, a couple of thin coats left to dry, and that's what we're painting on now. So this paint is going on quite thin because you can see the grey through it, but it's doing its job, and we will do a few layers. Now this is quite difficult because the face and the hair are wet, so I can't actually lean my finger on there in the way that I normally do. You will see me do that in future videos. I use the head itself as a way to steady my brush, because I hold my brush there, I lean that finger against the thing I'm painting, and that steadies this brush and lets me control it better doing it like this with two separate hands, you're not as accurate as when you can go boom, and it makes a set distance between the two things. Now I don't know if I was doing a lot of that painting off camera there, because I really wasn't looking. I'm not going any closer to those edges. See, around the face there's a little grey gap all the way around. I'm not going any closer with this brush, just because it's quite a big brush and I don't want to paint on the skin if I can help it. I don't mind when I'm doing dry brushing and stuff, painting skin colours onto the hair, because it's quite easy to repaint the hair. It's a flat colour until I start doing extra shades. But if you start painting over hair, painting over skin, that's actually harder to cover over. So I'm more careful towards the skin than I am towards the paint. Now, one thing I'm realising with this new paint versus the old MP paints that I used to use is I think I'm putting down the right amount, because it's coming out of a dropper. Whereas my old stuff, I would dip this brush into the jar, put some out, squidge it onto the palette, and carry on painting. Now with this, I'm dripping it out of it, and it feels like I'm dripping too much out. Like I don't want to waste it. But then I realise I get to halfway through what I'm doing and realise, oh, I'm actually running out of paint here. So the first thing that I've already learned in this first video is I need to put more paint on the canvas. It doesn't go as far as I think it's going to. So there you go, first lesson. Right, and already you can see just having the contrast between the hair and the skin looks a little bit more like him, which is good. Let me chuck the paintbrush in there so it doesn't dry. So you can see how you can see the grey. Now that it's started drying, you can see the grey through the skin. That will go when we do another 2 coats maybe on top, to cover that up. Now what I will probably do is do those 2 coats off camera, because you don't need to watch me doing exactly the same thing. I'm just going to be going on top, painting the same colour on top of that face in exactly the same way, until we've got a flat colour, and then we can start doing the interesting stuff. And it's going to be the same with the hair. To be honest, the hair sort of looks okay for now. Even though I can see some of the grey through it, I'm going to go on top of the hair with blacks and different browns and black shadows in the crevices and stuff anyway. So I think that's about right for what we need. I will get one of my smaller, thinner brushes. In fact, I can do it. No, actually, I just realised I've run out of paint. You know what? Give me a second. I was about to finish the video, but give me 1 second and I will do one more thing and then we'll finish the video. Right. So black brown. Let me get a thinner brush. Which brush to use? I'm just trying to see what sort of edge I need to use. La 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 la. That one should do. Okay, so I'm going to use this big brush that I just put in the water thing to clean off. I'm just using the bottom of the cup to bash off most of the paint, and I'm now going to get a bit of flow enhancer, drop that on top. Used too much. Okay, so I'm going to not mix all of the flow enhancer into it because I can tell that it was too much. And I don't need all of it because we're only going around the edges. So let me dip into that. Now this is still wet, so I should have actually, thinking about it now, left this till the next video, because I would be able to lean on the thing and get neat edges. Okay, so between videos, I will change the position of my camera because I need to really lean my elbow on the desk so I can get a good steady painting position, but it's too close to the camera. So I need to move the camera up and get it in the right place, because to get this in the right place about there for you, my elbow is off the edge of the desk, which is really uncomfortable, and I can't keep it in a steady position for you. So I will change that before the next video. Let me see. I'll do this as good as I can for now, and I'll make it better for the next one. So I've got a thinner brush, and I'm just taking this closer to the edge. Now what I will end up doing, which I pretty much always do on my heads, is I will soften the join between the dark hair and the skin. It won't just be a hard edged line like it is at the moment. Even though technically that's what it should be, it never looks right. And in the real world, make sure I've got these in the right place. In the real world, there would always be some shadow there, because once you start having hair going up against the edge of a face, it does block out some of the light. So I always mix in some shadow in there, and it's usually got some touches of red in with it and some brown, and I will do that so these edges don't have to be super perfect or super up against the skin, because the shadow will do that for us. Now, this is quite difficult here because I really need to steady against the head, and I can't do it because it's still wet. Okay, that's a bit better. Oops, I just touched a bit against the skin, but luckily we are still doing the first layers of the skin, so that will get covered up. That's why I don't normally like doing this until the head is dry and I can just rest my finger against it. In fact, I'm just going to do it anyway, and I will end up with paint on the edge of my little finger. But that's a price worth paying. I will also end up with a little blob of thinner paint where my finger has been touching it, because my finger will take some of the paint off. But that's okay, that's easy enough just to blob some extra paint on. But just by having my little finger on that edge there, lets me get a fixed distance where I'm working with the paint. It makes it much easier to do things like this. And I do this all the time. I do this when I'm painting eyes. I do this when I'm doing things like this. I do this when I'm painting eyebrows. Anything where you're doing fine, small amounts of detail. Let's see, told you. I do that with the finger resting, because just having two free hands, it's fine for doing big things, but when you start trying to get little tiny things, you just can't hold them in the same way. You just can't do it as accurately as you need to. don't know if you can see these though, are we? See, one thing that's always quite difficult is trying to do things in a way where I can see them properly, where, you know, my hand isn't blocking my own view, or the head or the brush isn't blocking my own view, but also in a way where the camera overhead can pick it up. And quite often those two things are not compatible. Like, in order to make sure that you guys can see it, I'll have to do something in a really awkward way that sort of stops me doing it properly. And it's why sometimes on some of my videos I will have to go, excuse me 1 second, I just really need to paint this one thing accurately, let me just do this. And I'll do it in a way where you can't really see it properly because it might be off camera, or I'm blocking the view with my hand or something like that. And I'll get it done and I'll come back and go, okay, here's what I've just done. Because sometimes I just can't do it and show you on camera at the same time. But I try to wherever I can. That's actually quite awkward here, because this is one of those times where I'm trying to show the camera up there, painting in here. Now normally painting this bit, I would just have this pointing right at my eyes so I could see what I was doing like this, but I suspect if I'm doing that, it's probably not in a way where the camera can see it very well, because I suspect the big chunks of hair that I'm trying to get behind, it's quite a deep cut, I suspect those overhangs of hair were probably blocking the camera. There's just some grey right in there, and I'm just trying to cover it up with even just one layer of this brown, and the shadows will fill in the rest, but I just want to get it done, but not necessarily right up to the skin, but really close up to it. Because sometimes when you've got quite like an empty? No, not empty, that's the wrong word. Quite an open bit here, you can go right up to the edge. But sometimes with bits like this, because that bit that sticks out there, when you're trying to paint in there, sort of right down in there, it's quite difficult because you can't move the brush around. But that's okay, that's done. So we've done enough of the hair. I think something's changed in my setup here, because as I'm moving around, I'm noticing my camera is wobbling more. And I wonder if I'm hitting the filing cabinet underneath, or is it when I'm hitting the desk? Oh, it's when I'm hitting the desk. Ah, okay. So clearly the way the camera is hanging over, and then the camera is hanging down off the light. Sorry, where the light is hanging over, and then the camera is hanging down off the light. It's quite free moving, it's not a solid, it's not a big frame or anything. So this thing, if I tap it now, moves quite a lot. Sorry for doing that, give people motion sickness. But clearly hitting the desk is enough to just make that wobble. That is something I will look into for future videos, but for now I will just try not to hit my desk. See, when I can actually lean on my desk with my elbow, that'll be much more solid. For now I'm sort of banging against the edge of the desk. But for now, let's have a look at that. So we've done one layer of skin, couple of layers of hair. Oh, my throat just made a weird noise there. I don't know if you heard that. Couple of layers of hair, and that's enough for now, because we'll be going on top of that with dark shadows and brown highlights. It's dark hair, it's black hair, but black hair is never black. One of the things that we will cover, and I already have in previous videos, but if you're watching this on YouTube, you might not have seen them. When you're painting black hair, it's never black, or more accurately, can't even talk today, it's never just black. So that's why I've done his black hair, or very dark brown hair, with very dark brown. There will be black washes done to go into all the crevices to make that black. Some of the bits, the top bits, will be dry brushed with maybe like a chocolate brown. I mean, there's one here called flat brown that seems quite close to the chocolate brown I used to use. There's a Hull Red, which is a bit like chocolate brown, but it's a bit too red. I might mix those two together. But put some on a brush, get rid of most of it, and just dry brush a few bits over the tops, and it just makes it look like someone who's got black hair, but it's catching the light, and it's much more interesting than just painting it black, which never looks real. So we will go over that. So those 2 coats I've done are fine, even though I can see bits of grey through the highlights. That's actually perfect, it's fine. So before the next video, as well as, in fact, you know what, let me jump back to the main camera and also try and remember, in fact I could just talk like that, but let me put it on a brighter thing. No, I've changed the wrong thing. It's confused when you've got 2 cameras. Okay, change that camera to brighter. Ooh, flashed around there. Get that out of the way. Hi. So I've done 1 layer of skin there, so as well as before the next video changing where I can lean, so I can lean with my elbows on the desk and have the camera in the right place, I will do that. I will also paint on his skin a couple of more layers of that colour that we mixed, which was beige red with a little bit of sunny skin tone and a little bit of vermilion, tiny amounts though. And I will paint over those, go neatly around the eyes, and just give it might take 1 more coat, it might take 2 more coats to get that a flat colour without the grey showing through, but that's what I'll do before the next video, because you don't need to watch me doing that again, because you've just watched me do it once. I know with my tutorials I always say that the whole point of them is that you get to watch every brush stroke, and that genuinely is true, or generally is true, especially when I'm doing things like painting interesting things like shadows around the eyes and colours of the cheeks and blood in the ears, where you can see with that's like bright red there, and blue under the eyes, and what's the colour of the lips, all of those interesting things. I was looking at the camera there so I could see where I was pointing. Doing stuff like that, you need to see every brushstroke, because that's quite interesting, and mixing paints and choosing and how thin are they and which colours do we use and how do we apply them. If I'm just doing another 2 flat coats of the thing you've just watched me do, that's just wasting your time. So I will do that before the next video. Excuse me. Can I just say, I love this mug and it's brilliant, but oh my god, it's awkward to drink out of. Look at the shape of that. How are you supposed to... It's so awkward to drink out of. Okay, that'll do. That's 48 minutes. That's long enough for the first video. We've established what we're doing. We've established who's watching this. We've established what I'm trying to do with the paints. I've got a really itchy nose. We've established that I've got an itchy nose because of my moustache. We've done some of the painting and we are on our way. So that's it. Thanks for joining me for that first video. Whether you are on Patreon or YouTube, depending on when I've uploaded this to where. Thanks for sticking with me, and we will get this done, and by the end we will have a really good Kylo Ren looking head, and fingers crossed we will know how we got there with these paints. If not, it'll take another series, but I think it's going to be alright. I've just punched the desk there and I just realised that sound might have gone through the microphone, because sometimes it does that. I have to pretend like I'm on telly and you can't hit anything or touch anything. Right, take care guys, have a good evening, have a good day or good weekend, or wherever you are, or whenever you are when you're watching this. And I'm just lining up my cursor for where I need to click. Okay, I need to get, you can get these little things, and I want to get one, because at the moment, anytime I change my titles on these videos, or press start or stop or anything like that, I'm doing it with my trackpad. I haven't got a mouse, I've got one of these trackpads. And I move the arrow around to click on the thing, and then move it around to click on it. And it's quite awkward, because while I'm trying to talk to you, I'm then getting my hand on the trackpad and I'm looking down there and I'm seeing where do I need to move the thing. And that sort of stops me from talking to you guys. But you can get these little boxes that I've seen, USB thing that plugs in, and they have like 6 or 12 buttons on them, and the buttons have little LCD screens in that you can customize, and it's plugged in and it sits on your desk, and it's almost like a mini TV studio. So, like, one button will say start record, one button will say stop, one button will say start titles, one will say end titles. You can have them how you want them. So to be able to talk to you and then just go clunk and hit a button and know what I've done would be so much easier, but they're a little bit expensive. I'll get one next year or something, but at some point I will get one of those. I don't know where I'll put it because my desk is quite full, but I'll get one at some point. Anyway, I've got the cursor lined up now, so thanks for watching, and I will see you in part 2, and we will get on with, well, I don't know, we'll do more of the skin. Maybe we'll start doing the dry brushing of the highlights of the skin, or we'll do something. Have a good day, and I'll see you soon, and thanks for watching. Take care, guys. Bye. Ow, I just hit my knuckle on the desk. I was putting my hand down and I forgot that the board of my paint was sticking out, and I did that. This has been a successful first video. Welcome to my world. Okay, bye.